doing this right? I don't know. So we're going to cover that. All right, and now we're live on YouTube. Fantastic. And there we go. Okay, well, welcome everybody on YouTube. Welcome everybody on Facebook. In today's video, we're going to dive into an exciting subject of a very little spoken about subject, which is what does vagus nerve stimulation actually physically feel like in your body? How do you know if you're doing it right or if you're doing it wrong? We're going to cover that. And it's something that you need to know, even if you don't ever go buy a device or anything like that. We want to understand what does it feel like if you're breathing right or doing something right, okay? But first, before we do that, we're going to start with our simultaneous squeeze. And what that is going to be a Valsalva squeeze. We're all going to take a deep breath together, all inhale out at the same time, fill our lungs up. Then we're going to take all that air and squeeze it with our stomach, our chest, our diaphragm, like this, and kind of squeeze it up into our head. Make sure you don't do this while you're driving a car or anything like that, because it may make you feel dizzy and it may make you feel pretty good. Okay, so here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. All the way in, and then take a sip of air at the top. Hold it and squeeze. And exhale slowly through the mouth. And calm. Nice. Very good. That feels pretty amazing. Awesome. How do you guys feel in the chat? Do you feel something that time? Do you feel like you're getting better at it? The more you do that process, the more it's going to feel a lot better, because your body is going to get more used to it, more accustomed to it. So I highly encourage you to do that practice and get good at it, because you can immediately change your state if you're able to do that. So a lot of people come into the Facebook group and they always ask like, hey, I'm feeling really anxious. I don't feel really good. Is there any one thing I can do right now to feel better? And that's it right there. So if you are around somebody who is having a kind of a bad time, or you want to help them change their state really quickly, just have them do the Valsalva squeeze like we do. Teach them to do the exact same thing. Be like, hey, this guy on YouTube, on Facebook, he taught me this method called the Valsalva squeeze. And all you do is just take a deep breath in, squeeze it, and then hold it, and then push it in your body. Hold it for like 5 to 10 seconds until you feel different. And then you exhale slowly through the mouth. Just like that. And you'll see in their face, they're going to switch. They're going to turn to, oh, wow, I feel so much better. Thank you. So that's what the Valsalva squeeze can do. So, all right. So in terms of what VNS feels like, so what do we talk about when we talk about VNS? Just so we're clear, in this particular video, we're going to primarily be talking about vagus nerve stimulation from a technology standpoint, from the technology that I am the most familiar with. We're super familiar with, I'm very familiar with hands-on experience with many types of different ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, from electrical stimulation to magnetic stimulation to light stimulation to ultrasound stimulation. So we're going to talk primarily about electrical, but also a lot more about vagus nerve stimulation with ultrasound. So that's what we're going to really speak to. What have I seen personally in person and through, years of working with the technology? What have I seen as possible from a subjective feels like, looks like, feels like perspective on when you stimulate the vagus nerve with ultrasound. So we're going to cover that in detail today. So there's lots of ways to stimulate your vagus nerve in other ways. Do like what we did, breathing. If you're like, what does that feel like? Just try it. If you want to know what it feels like, we did breathing at the very beginning of this video. So join us at the very beginning and you'll get to experience that. But for generally speaking, there is a common feeling, there's a common effect that comes from stimulating your vagus nerve in the right way. And the effect is going to come down to whatever we consider to be the rest and digest feeling. So think of it like this. After you've had a really delicious meal, you ate Thanksgiving food, and your stomach is just so full, and it was just such good food. It really hit the spot. You can still kind of like taste it. You're still burping up some of the delicious sriracha sauce that you had or whatever it was. And you go to take a nap on a summer day, and you lay in bed and just kind of drift off listening to storytelling or something like that, like NPR or music, or just the sounds of people talking in the background at a very distant level. And you just kind of slowly, smoothly drift off into that nice, relaxed place where it's just easy to stay awake or easy to fall asleep. And you can either choose one or the other. But it just feels so good to be laying down and just being in your soft blanket in that nice warm nook of your house. That's a lot like what vagus nerve stimulation feels like. If you do it right, that's what it should feel like. That's the kind of state we want to get you into, particularly. So when you get into that state, it does tend to make you feel really calm, really relaxed, and really good. So how do you get there without breathing? Well, a lot of people might do things like vagus nerve stimulation with electrical stimulation. And electrical stimulation is going to have a pretty similar feeling to that. Electrical stimulation, it works fine. Like, nothing against it. It's nothing bad with it at all. From a perspective of the feelings, I would say that it probably will get you there. It's absolutely known to have the ability to get you to a nice feeling state, for sure. But I don't find that it gets you there consistently. Not like nothing works 100% of the time. Nothing works 100% of the time. The only thing that I think works 100% of the time is probably like heroin. That probably works 100% of the time, but that has a lot of side effects, and I don't recommend that. So don't go down that road, because if you're like, I need my hit every single time, guaranteed, that's no fun, right? It's no fun. If you went to a casino and you pulled the lever every time and you won $1 every time you did it, your arms would get tired. You'd be like, this sucks. The body and the brain needs some variation. It needs some variety. It needs a spice of life. So with electrical stimulation of the vagus nerve, it's never going to be 100% of the time that you're always going to feel great. But it is going to happen over 50% of the time, usually, hopefully. Ideally, it's going to happen over 50% of the time that you do it. And so that is a good approximation to set on, because you should have some expectations for how specifically is the vagus nerve stimulation technology going to affect you. Figuring that out is, I think, very crucial. And figuring that out fully is just going to take time. So there's only one way to know if you're doing it properly, and that's just to do it. It's just to give it a shot and start doing it. So whatever options you have available to stimulate your vagus nerve, I would say 100% it's better to start now than wait 2, 3, 4 years from now. Because typically, guys, here's the thing that we see the most is that a lot of these autoimmune conditions, these inflammatory conditions, are happening because the vagus nerve is hurting in some way, shape, or form. There's really just, again, I see a lot of people going down the route of there's a genetic test that they took, and it showed they don't methylate things properly, so they have to take a special type of B12, or they have the MTHFR gene mutation, and they have this and that mutation, and then they have to eat a certain type of food. But you talk to them years later, and they're still chasing down these genetic issues. Guys, here's the thing. Genetics it's not 1-to-1. So if I do a genetic test on you, your genetics do not translate 100% to 100% in your body. Your genes have what's called post-translational modifications that are made to it. That's from the epigenetic code. So your DNA isn't who you are. You are not your DNA. You are your DNA plus the post-translational modifications once the DNA is read out into your body from those cells. And then there's modifications that happen afterwards. That happens because of epigenetics. Those are epigenetic code software pieces that modify your genetics. So even if somebody says, oh, no, I got this genetic test and it seems I have to take these vitamins and I have to take this and that. Maybe that's somewhat true, but at the same time, you still have a vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve didn't go away magically. Nobody is spared from needing a vagus nerve. These are just basically facts of living. And if you look at the people who are the top performers in the world, the people who perform at the top level, they all reach for, guess what? Vagus nerve stimulation. Some of the biggest names in health and wellness today all have their very own vagus nerve stimulation setup at home. They all use it. They all do it. So if you think you're healthy, doesn't mean you're exempt from needing a healthy vagus nerve. And also, just because you're healthy today doesn't mean that you're immune from getting sick in the future. The only thing that really does provide robust immunity is a healthy vagus nerve too. So at all levels of health, at low levels of health and high levels of health, you're almost always going to need to incorporate your vagus nerve. I don't think that there's really any exception. I mean, I just can't think of one time in life where there's an exception to say, you know what, this is a time in my life where I would really love to go without a vagus nerve. I'd actually love to have a compromised vagus nerve right now. I would like to have no ability to influence or modify my vagus nerve's activity right now. I can't think of a single instance where that would ever happen. So, fact of the matter is, it is very important. So you're going to have something. You're going to have something. I would say, like, gosh, one of my mentors, he always says, winter is coming. He always says that. Winter is coming. And I know it's from, what is it? That stupid HBO show, the Dragon Show. That's in that show. And winter may be coming. Winter may always be coming. We don't know. We don't know what's around the corner. So being resilient in the face of a potential winter is the message there. That is the real takeaway there. So when it comes to being resilient and being prepared, it's extremely important to make sure that you don't get yourself caught off guard. And part of the ways that you can go about doing that is really through getting your vagus nerve to be strong and getting it to feel good. And not making that's not an optional thing. That's a mandatory thing, is to make sure your vagus nerve is working at all times. Because if your vagus nerve isn't working, then no matter how much food you eat and how much you try to relax, your body won't be able to get there. So a vagus nerve is that path. It's that slicked pathway that allows you to go from a busy day to laying down in bed and falling right asleep and feeling super relaxed. That is what the feeling of the vagus nerve is. The vagus nerve isn't a destination. The vagus nerve is it's a process. It's a system of things that unfold in real time. And you either experience that unfolding or you don't. There's no way around it. The vagus nerve is not a destination. It's the journey you take to get there, wherever there is. But you definitely want to experience the journey as it unfolds. Because you can't know the flow of things if you don't know what happened just before and just after. Nobody wakes up in the morning and then forgets their past and forgets that they have a future. You have to wake up in the morning knowing that you've had a life that's happened today, a life that's happened yesterday, and a life that will happen tomorrow. And you have that flow of information. So the vagus nerve is like a flow of information going through your body. And you have to have relative contextual understanding of your vagus nerve from moment to moment. And if you miss that moment to moment awareness of your vagus nerve, then you miss the whole experience of having a vagus nerve. And then you disconnect from your vagus nerve. And when that happens, it's not even to say that you're not going to feel good. It's just basically to say that you won't feel anything. And you might think, well, that sounds great because I don't feel good right now. And probably to a degree, that's also a consequence of having a poor vagal system as well. Your vagus nerve is what heals you. Your vagus nerve helps you move through challenges effectively. It's what you need to get unstuck oftentimes. Your vagus nerve is what moves you through the sticky times in life, right? So that's the first kind of thing to say here. Now, in terms of the real applicable effects that you should be looking for to know if your vagus nerve is working or not, I'll just give some contextual clues, because all I can say are experiences that you may have had. So one experience, which is kind of to the top of the mind here, which is the allusion to the orgasmic feeling of the vagus nerve, which is the very first time that I ever witnessed direct ultrasound vagus nerve stimulation was back in 2016 during a trip to Napa Valley in California, the wine place, the wine capital of the world, in Napa Valley. And we found that with the specific ultrasound device that I had developed was that it had a small enough head, a tip on it, that it could actually fit in the ear right here. So basically right on the concha. And so we programmed it. We had a computer, like a laptop set up to it. We programmed the ultrasound with a specific sequence of codes that allows it to work, to go like that. It goes like scans across the whole face of the ultrasound. And so we did that scanning motion, and then we placed it with some gel up against our conchas. Now, I went first, my friend Jay went second, and then a woman named Betsy went third. I didn't know what exactly to look for in that experience. He felt like it tickled, and she had what looked like she was having an orgasm right there, like on the spot. It was difficult for us to say, hey, we got to go. Like, we got to go to lunch. It's lunchtime. And she did not want us to take that probe, to take that ultrasound off of her ear. She was like, no, just wait. Oh, wait a minute, a little bit more. Like it was this kind of moving towards that experience. So that was pretty incredible. That was very impressive display. None of us had any expectations about what we're expecting. Probably in history, we're some of the very first people to have actually done that back in 2016. There are no, at that time, no reports whatsoever of people having done vagus nerve stimulation with ultrasound in the ear. So, that was not a thing that existed prior to this moment. So I thought that was very interesting, to say the least. So yeah, that was kind of a first impression of vagus nerve stimulation on the ear. What does that feel like? What does it look like? What could you expect from it? And I would say, generally speaking, the effect is pretty much everything up to orgasmic. And if you saw my post the other day, I talked about this research from the guy who played Superman. I forget his name. Christopher Reeves, I believe. He got a spinal cord injury, and so he created the Christopher Reeves Spinal Cord Injury Association, or the foundation, and they do a lot of research on that. And it's true. It has been found that women in particular who have had their spinal cord severed, which is like a horrific injury to have, right? Either they're quadriplegic, they lost function in their hands and legs, or they're paraplegic, which means just from the waist down. But in either way, you would lose sexual function in that case. As a man, you would not have the ability to have sexual function. But as a woman, because of these specific fibers of the vagus nerve that circumvent the spine, women can still have an orgasm, even though they've become quadriplegic or paraplegic, which is pretty darn incredible. And that's really just because of the power of the vagus nerve, which circumvents the spine and travels all the way down the body. So you have this conduit of energy. Most people think of like what connects to your head, to your organs, is your spine, but they don't realize that your vagus nerve is what does the vast majority of like careful regulation of organ function. If your vagus nerve didn't work, your heart would pop from beating 120 times per minute. Without your vagus nerve, your spleen would basically pump out so much inflammation that you would die within a few hours. Without your vagus nerve, you wouldn't be able to digest food. Without your vagus nerve, you'd have gastroparesis, and food would get backed up in your colon, and you would die of toxic megacolon without a vagus nerve. So you tell me, I don't know, does this sound important? Does it not sound important? I don't know. Also, that it regulates emotions, sexual function, hormone release, thyroid. Your thyroid is interconnected with your vagus nerve heavily. So a lot of women will have to go on thyroid medications just to manage their day-to-day energy levels. And we've seen that women who use VNS with ultrasound, that they're no longer at the whim and beck and call of their thyroid medication anymore, is that they're able to lower the dose and still feel no difference, which is a good thing. They still feel normal and natural without massive amounts of thyroid medication because they're stimulating their vagus nerve. So that's a pretty incredible result right there. So yeah, I mean, there are subjective, like in the moment feelings. They're kind of like where your mouth kind of turns up and you start to smile, where you have that kind of internal bliss. It's like a nice release, a relax of energy in your body. And it can feel really good. It can feel awfully tasty when you do it. So I would say certainly if you're looking for that really good feeling in life and you're not getting it from other places, then experimenting with some form of VNS might be just the thing you need. Because when you do that, it does make you more apt to be more social as well. You feel more able to control the safety cues in your own body when you have access to technology that can just get you there without you having to struggle to do it, right? And I would rather put the control, the power in someone's hand than have the good feelings be interdependent on getting it from another person. Because oftentimes in life, nobody can guarantee that the people around you are going to be the kinds of people that are so abundant that will want to give you good feelings. So as much as we might argue like, well, we need other people, and that's true to an extent, but not all people that you have available to you are there to give you a good feeling or a good emotion. And we know for a fact that loneliness is the number one killer, basically, these days. The thing that will kill people is that lack of inner connection. And having social connections is a socially embedded evolutionary drive. But in our day and age, that may not be the fact that you can just go out and get like a nice, great conversation with someone. You know, we live in a very insulated and isolated society today. So it can be really helpful to have some way to get that good feeling. And your vagus nerve is a big key to that. I would say it's the key to getting that feeling without having to be dependent on other people to be able to feel good, right? Because oftentimes I think that's why people consider the route of taking their own lives, is because they only get that feeling, they only get that really good feeling from other people. And when that feeling is taken away or when it's gone and they can't feel it anymore, they think, well, life is not worth living if I can't get that feeling. And it's not that other people give you that feeling, it's that other people give you the permission to feel that way. But that feeling is always you. That feeling is always within you all the time. And you don't need other people to give you permission to feel good. You don't. You can there are ways to elicit the feeling of goodness, of gratitude, of graciousness, of joy, of bliss. And it doesn't have to be something that you give out to other people. You can't give that control out to other people over your life. It's just not right. So I would say that what is the feeling of vagus nerve stimulation? It's probably the most important feeling you'll feel in your entire life, is that feeling. I mean, having done this work for so long, I've spoken to a lot of people, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have had surgical injury to their vagus nerve. And, I'm a hopeful guy. I'm an optimistic person. But even then, in some cases, when people say, yeah, my left vagus nerve was completely cut from a botched thyroid removal because they were trying to cut my thyroid out and they accidentally cut my vagus nerve. And they cut 50% of my vagus nerve off, which there's an effect from that. You're going to feel that. That's going to affect the quality of your life, no doubt about it. But since I'm a hopeful person, you always have a backup. Just like people have two kidneys. We all know that you can donate one kidney and you can live a perfectly normal life. And it's like, yeah, you are putting a lot of risk on that right kidney, that other kidney. If that goes wrong too, then that's going to be problematic. But you can still give a kidney and survive. You can live a normal, perfectly good life with one kidney. You don't need two kidneys. So if one half of your vagus nerve gets damaged by your neck or by an infection or anything like that, is it going to lead to a somewhat of a higher chance of impaired quality of life? Yes, that's definitely possible. But it can happen, and it does happen. And I've talked to a lot of people who, like I said, I've had people who got a lynx surgery, people who have really bad reflux, silent reflux. They get a cuff, like a bracelet looped around their esophagus with a magnet, and that clasps down on their esophagus, that only opens up when food passes through, and it closes back down when there's no food. So it's a pretty ingenious little device. But in order for them to get it to stick where it is, they cut right under the vagus nerve, and they use the vagus nerve as a hook to hang this lynx cuff, Lynx, gastric reflux cuff, onto their esophagus. That can irritate the vagus nerve a lot. You're literally cutting right through parts of the vagus nerve to use it as this like door hanger kind of thing, to hang this artificial titanium magnet device. If you don't know what it is, you can look it up later, but it's called an Lynx. And I have had so many people come to this Facebook group saying it didn't help with the reflux. I've had really bad issues, hoarseness, coughing, swallowing issues, digestion issues, depression issues from that surgery. And when I quizzed into like, well, how do they do that surgery? They're like, oh yeah, they cut right into the vagus nerve to use it as the hook point. Like, that's not good, right? So just because somebody's cutting into your body doesn't mean they know, anatomically speaking, how important the vagus nerve is. And I think everybody here knows, I mean, maybe some of you do, maybe some of you don't, but if the consensus is any indication, if people go into their doctor today and they say, hey, can you tell me about my vagus nerve? Could you tell me about how important my vagus nerve is, doctor? They're not going to be able to have an answer for you that's more than 2 minutes long. They might be able to talk about it for about 60 seconds. They learn about 60 seconds of content about the vagus nerve in particular to be able to talk to you as a patient in a doctor's office. Now, they may be able to go and tell you some anatomical features. Yeah, it comes down your neck, it goes to your heart, goes to your spleen, but they're not going to be able to get into the full details of it. That's just not their, that's not their bread and butter. Because again, a doctor in a hospital is good. You want doctors. We want doctors, folks. We want surgery. We want medications. We want antibiotics. These are the people who save your lives when you're just barely hanging on. So I'm super grateful that doctors exist and that therapists exist. I'm grateful for all these people. But in terms of, we all know that there's a system of sick care that's going to be there to catch you when you fall, so to speak. So when you get really, really sick and you go to the ER, doctors are going to be there. But they're not going to be able to provide any meaningful discussion or dialogue about the vagus nerve or anything like that. So those people become surgeons too. And when they're told, oh yeah, just cut under the vagus nerve and implant this Lynx magnetic device around your esophagus, and no biggie, no more reflux. That doesn't seem to work. Oftentimes it doesn't work. And then they have tons of issues afterwards from a Lynx surgery, right? Anybody here in the chat, do you guys know what a Lynx is? If you know what a Lynx is, type, yeah, I've heard of it, or no, I haven't heard of it. So let me know if you guys, do you guys know what I'm talking about? I don't have a picture of it, but it's basically like a bracelet that you wear on your esophagus that closes your esophagus, and it works with magnets, and it's a crazy surgery. Although, right, with reflux, imagine you had heartburn all day, I can see why somebody would go that route to get it. Oh, you haven't heard of it, Charlene? Yeah. So yeah, a Lynx device. We've had clients in the program who use those, and they do get relief from the VNS, but still, your vagus nerve does get cut into. So, okay, yeah, so not very common. So yeah, TK, you haven't heard of it either. So Links, it's not extremely common, but it is something that is done. We've had a number of people here. It's funny, like I say, like I've learned a lot about health and medicine and all that stuff by being very focused on the vagus nerve. If I just camp out on the vagus nerve, I'm sure I'm going to learn all the secrets of the human body eventually. It seems like a lot goes through it. There's a lot that happens with the vagus nerve that dictates human outcomes, essentially. So, which is pretty cool. I think that's relatively exciting to be a part of. But yeah, so like I said, like I'm a hopeful person. So if somebody comes to me and they say, well, my vagus nerve got cut from a surgery, which does happen, can I get better, or is it hopeless for me? And I would always err on the side of saying of course there's hope. And I don't mean that in any fake way. I really do mean that. I've seen cases where the vagus nerve was actually cut in surgery, and they tested it months later because that person had the will to heal, that vagus nerve literally grew back. I mean, we're talking about probably half or a full centimeter of nerve damage of the vagus nerve grew back. The vagus nerve learned how to grow back onto itself. So if you, for any reason, have any damage to your vagus nerve, if you have any tangible damage, I want you to be really clear here, is that if you have the will to heal, then your vagus nerve will heal. Your vagus nerve responds to your thoughts. Your vagus nerve is part of your brain. It's not like your dang pinky, where, it's like my pinky doesn't seem to have any agency. I kind of control it. I move it. This is like one of the dumbest parts of your body. Sorry, pinky, love you, but it's true. Your pinky could get cut off and it would suck, but it's not going to your whole life isn't going to be ruined from it. You're not going to be like, oh my God, woe is me, my pinky is gone. But if that happens to your vagus nerve, all kinds of things go wrong. So your vagus nerve is literally in your brain. It's in your body. And so it dictates all emotions. It's more to ask. I think the better question to ask in response to the title of this video, what does vagus nerve stimulation feel like, is what does it not feel like? What is life like without a vagus nerve? Because that'll answer your question a lot better than for me to go down the entire list of all possible states of emotions that you could feel with a really healthy and intact vagus nerve. That's a better way to phrase the question, honestly. So, I mean, for you guys, what are we have some people who have I know we have some people in the chat who have some experience with VNS. How would you describe it if we're gonna talk about some states or some effects or some feelings that elicits? What are those? And we don't have to be Shakespearean here. I mean, is it good? Is it bad? Is it healthy? Is it happy? Is it joyful, blissful, relaxing? These are all pretty valid terms I would associate with the vagus nerve, if it was stimulated. For instance, I just got to use a brand new in-ear ultrasound device just recently, and I gotta say the effect was pretty very pleasant. It was actually really cool. I just felt so good. It's hard to put your finger on it. It just felt like I was very blissed out, right? Had a long good day, long good Friday, a lot of phone calls. Got to spend time with my partner. And, I did ultrasound right in the ear, right here. And gosh, for about a full 45 minutes, I was just like, oh yeah, like that. It tickles your brain neurons, basically. It releases a bunch of endorphins in your head. It's very wild. It's very wild. It's very, very wild. And this is only about 2 minutes or something. So 2 minutes of VNS to this earpiece did have a pretty substantial effect on me today. So that was cool. That was notable for sure. Cool. And then Charlene, we've got without VNS, life sucked. Yeah. Changed my whole body and health. Love. Awesome. That's so good to hear. Yeah. I mean, certainly it's an effect that I can tell in you too. I mean, we've known each other now for quite a few months in a more, one-to-one way in terms of we were part of the 5-day challenge a few months ago. And I can just see, just the difference it's made in your life overall from a feelings perspective, but also just in terms of what does your life look like today. It's vastly different. So yeah, I mean, we can talk a lot about, like, again, independent passing feelings. That's great. But also, what does it feel like to look at your grandchildren being happy and being there in their life? What does that feel like? What's the feeling of that? That's a much more complex feeling than just feeling like, oh man, I was laying in bed and I felt blissed out. Ugh. I felt just like, whoa. Not that there's anything wrong with that you can do both. But I mean, yeah, when we start asking the question, like, what is the feeling of vagus nerve stimulation? When your vagus nerve works, you're very capable and effective as a human being. I mean, for me, when I use, for instance, the entire fact that I'm able to feel the effects of ultrasound vagus nerve stimulation in my ear for the purpose of mindfulness and present moment awareness, and to feel that good, it's not just that the ultrasound is stimulating my vagus nerve, it's that I was a crucial key player in making that technology exist, and that I'm a developer of that technology. And I've spent years now perfecting the technology to make that possible, and it's now in production. So when I'm doing it, I'm like, wow, not only does this feel great, but I also have the genesis, the story of what I'm doing. Is that I was an integral part in bringing the technology to make this possible. And now as well to get this technology out to more people so that they can try it. That actually does feel pretty amazing. And I can only really give credit to vagus nerve stimulation for all of that having been made possible, because it's been the vagus nerve stimulation that's allowed me to personally be more effective in life, and also to be a guiding source of information and encourage and hope for people all over the world in their own health journey. So yeah, I mean, if we're going to ask myself, what does that feel like? That feels pretty dang good. I'd say it feels better than sex, honestly. Like that's a much more grandiose feeling. Sex is pretty good though, so can't complain there, but I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty incredible. Amazing from Charlene. Good. TK shares, the feeling depends on the location of vagus nerve stimulation. Overall, anxiety reduction, more energy overall, feeling healthier. Good stuff. Great. Awesome. Good. I mean, that's all we can really ask for. I mean, that's pretty darn good. And it's drug-free. It's not addictive. It takes a few minutes to do at a time. You only have to do it basically once per day to get these kinds of effects. I mean, pretty dang amazing. I don't know, I'm big on it. I'm a fan. Oh, and Danielle, you asked, what is VNS? Great question. Vagus nerve stimulation. So we have a vagus nerve that runs down our neck into our body. That's what this whole Facebook group is about, is really spreading the gospel of the vagus nerve. And no, we're not a religious organization, but I just say that jokingly. The vagus nerve is a pretty incredible cluster of nerves in your body that regulates your ability to relax. So when people are really stressed out, it typically means that their vagus nerve shut down. So when your vagus nerve turns off, then you're likely to get very stressed, and you'll feel that stress. You'll feel that anger and that inflammation in your body. That's the opposite of vagus nerve stimulation. But when you are in that state and you have a tool, you have something that you can physically place on your neck or in your ear or on your body that administers either electrical stimulation or ultrasound stimulation, you can activate that dormant, sleeping giant called the vagus nerve, and it starts to awaken, and you feel like you're turning on a part of your body. It's like one of the best drugs, but it's called targeted bioelectric medicine. So it's not a drug. You're not taking a pill. You're just stimulating specific neurons in the body that only selectively activate the good parts, the relaxation response, the part that makes you go, hey, everything is going to be okay. I don't have to be freaking out all the time. Because, I mean, how often, if we're, unless, unless you're in like a Jason Voorhees movie and there's actually like a masked man with a chainsaw coming after you, I notice most people do freak out to the degree like, I'm like, wow, are you a central character in a horror film? Because you act like it every day. Most people don't need to respond to life to that degree. They're in this emergency mode, and they, again, if you're in an emergency mode all the time, you realize you will create the conditions for more emergencies. So it's kind of like life gives you more of how you treat it, in a sense, if that makes sense. Yeah. So Danielle, what should I use to stimulate to use? Let's see. Well, I would say we do this practice here. We'll do it now. So everybody will do a complimentary round of the Valsalva squeeze. So there's a simple practice you can do to stimulate your vagus nerve right now. And so it's a simple breathing practice. What we're going to be doing is, you remember I told you about your vagus nerve runs down your diaphragm and it goes to your stomach. Your diaphragm is a big flat muscle that sits under your lungs and next to your heart. And your vagus nerve runs right through it on both sides of the esophagus. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a big deep breath in, like suck as much air into your lungs, and then you're going to squeeze your chest and your stomach down, like almost like you're trying to breathe out really rapidly, but you're going to retain your breath from coming out of your mouth. So it's going to be like you're trying to blow all that air out through your lips being very pursed, like you're trying to blow out of a really tiny straw consistently, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to hug your vagus nerve, and it's going to help your vagus nerve release acetylcholine. For those wondering, what is this light behind me? Just a little secret, I don't say this every video, but that's the molecular sign for acetylcholine, which is very beautiful. And this thing is what makes your vagus nerve work. And it doesn't glow like that, but it would be cool if it did. But that's the molecular signature for acetylcholine. Half acetyl group and half choline. So that's why you should take the supplement choline for your vagus nerve. So anyway, that's why I have that up there. So when you do that Valsalva squeeze, your vagus nerve goes, ooh, and it kind of squeezes this stuff called vagus stuff. Literally, the vagus nerve squeezes out a bunch of this neurotransmitter called acetylcholine all into your brain, all into your body, and it will help cool you down and calm you down as well. Okay, so when you're feeling hot, this will help kind of soothe you from the inside out. Okay, so it's very simple. So ready? We're gonna do it. Big breath in. At the very top, you're gonna take another extra sip, like take in as much air as you can, and then squeeze and try to blow it out of your mouth. But you can put your finger here and try to restrict the air at your lips, like you're blowing into a straw that is closed. Like that. And just keep on pushing more and more pressure. And if you're not getting the effect, push more, push harder. Okay? So ready? In 3, 2, 1, breathe in. And then sip of air. Hold it. And squeeze. And exhale. Okay, nice. Good. Okay, so that's a really good session. Since that's the second one I've done here in the last 43 minutes. That one especially felt like, whoa. I could tell you for certain that if I didn't know what psychedelic drugs were, I would probably say that was kind of psychedelic in a sense. So if you do it right and you put the right kind of pressure, remember, like everything in life is simply about learning skills, getting better at it. So if you didn't get it, you're like, but Sterling, I didn't get the feeling, I didn't get the effect. What am I doing wrong? Don't worry about it, right? If I were to say, hey, come with me and my friends this weekend, we're going to go play a game of basketball, and we're all really friendly, and we're just going to take the basketball and try to shoot it up into the hoop. And if you didn't get it the first time, nobody would have any questions about, well, gosh, do your arms not work? Are you dumb? No, we wouldn't say that. It's just say, well, you keep on trying. You keep on shooting. Eventually, with enough practice and enough help and enough technique, you'll eventually be able to kind of get under the basket and shoot a ball up into the hoop and get it. And that's even harder than what we're doing with breath. So if you didn't get it the first time, then that's fine. We do the Valsalva squeeze at the very, very, very beginning of every one of our videos, which we do every single day at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm over here in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. So this is what I do on 5 p.m. every day. So I hope you join us if you want to do that. But that's an effect that you can get very easily, and you can almost instantly stimulate your vagus nerve. So I would highly suggest that, Danielle, if that's kind of an effect that you want to experiment with, you can do that at any time of the day, right when you wake up. I usually do that. I do that first thing in the morning. I go outside of my backyard. I ride my Peloton bicycle. I drink coffee, just kind of like warm things up, and I do some breathing out there while I watch the sun come up. So you can kind of find a nice place to kind of center yourself and do that kind of a practice. It could be really good. But yeah. So let me ask Danielle, if you're still here. She might have left. I don't know. She's like, screw this. I don't want to do any breathing. That's too much work. So Danielle, were you able to do that? And did you feel anything? Did you get yay? Did you get a thumbs up? Did you feel something, or did you not feel anything? Did anybody else feel anything? But yeah, I would like to hear from Danielle in particular. So yes, I felt something, or no, I didn't feel anything. If she's still here, I don't know. But okay, cool. So she wrote, yeah. Okay, good. So you did feel something. All right. So that feeling really comes from that squeezing of the vagus nerve right in the diaphragm. Your vagus nerve runs right up and down your whole body, and it runs through the diaphragm, which is the circular hole. Well, it's a big muscle with a hole in the middle, and you squeeze down on it. You kind of like tighten down right on the vagus nerve, and that's a good feeling if you kind of tighten down on something, squeeze it. That's really good feeling for your vagus nerve as it runs up and down the esophagus. So that produces a ton of acetylcholine, and it's good for your brain, good for your body, helps calm down your heart, slows down your heart a little bit, so you kind of get to a nice calm state. So that's honestly, as far as what I would say in this video, that is by far the best thing to do. If that's what you need, if that could fix you legitimately, if you just got in the habit of doing that every day, life would be so much easier for you and for me and for everybody. It's a pretty incredible practice. And that's about all you need. But yeah, generally speaking, stuff like that can give you a glimpse into what the world of vagus nerve stimulation looks like, and just like, think of it like this, like I think with vagus nerve stimulation, I think that there's certainly what we'll call a refined palate. I'm going to sound very snobby right now, but a couple of people who are in the chat here, like TK and Charlene as well, specifically are, I would call connoisseurs, I would say advanced connoisseurs of vagus nerve stimulation, because I happen to know, because they're members of my program, they happen to have access to some of the most advanced forms of vagus nerve stimulation technology that is available on the planet today. Fortunately, the same kind of stuff that I work with and that I develop. So we all work together. We're friends outside of these videos. So I would say, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with food, right? Like if you asked a French Michelin star restaurant reviewer to say, what is the experience of, suckling duck or a poached egg made by one of the best chefs in the world, they're probably going to describe it in some pretty incredible ways. Their whole feeling will start to, be more refined. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Danielle. I'm going to actually just remove that because I just think it's a little triggering to share that in chat. So, sorry about that. But yeah, anyway, I just trying to keep things up here, but yeah, so there's going to be people who are more refined in their taste. And, yeah, sorry, just, it's not really, this isn't really the group for that, but, Um, Certainly, I hope you're getting some help and stuff like that. Certainly my heart goes out to you for sure. But we just try to keep those kinds of words off the chat, just so you know, because we have a lot of people here who are also in their own states of health, and we want to be kind of sentimental to the words that we're using as well, because other people have to see that too, and it can be like like a whoa, huh, like a really shocking kind of thing. So just be mindful there in terms of public stuff. But yeah, but certainly there's a whole spectrum of like refined taste when it comes to kind of describing the effects of vagus nerve stimulation, where a French chef would describe it in one way versus a kind of a Midwestern American might be really gung-ho about the Grimace character from McDonald's new berry smoothie shake, that's out there. They're like, dang, that was a good shake, right? And the palate is going to be different from person to person. And also it's really just down to experience, right? Somebody people who've never used a VNS device, it's hard to describe to them the full range of what VNS can be like, versus someone who has a little glimpse of it. And I would say that little glimpse is the Valsalva squeeze that we did, right? So if you're like, I can only describe these things to you with words. Fortunately, I can also instruct you on how to breathe a little bit. That's kind of, that is, I don't want to say it's the best that I can do. Certainly there's something about storytelling, and if you go see a movie, or if you watch something on screen that's very visceral and you feel it, or you feel happy or you feel sad, this range of emotions is a way of stimulating someone's internal vagal systems as well. So certainly I think everybody has good. Gonna start doing it a couple times a day. Yeah, I mean, I really think it could help. But it's a stepping stone into something that could expand into something really great for sure. I think that for me, breathing was, I don't even know if I would say, what did I do first exactly? I'm just trying to remember. I think most likely, yeah, I mean, what I most likely did first was probably the ultrasound on the ear. If I was going to say the first exposure I really had to like a tangible time of, I mean, imagine that, you guys. Right now in the year 2023, I feel like we're at the pinnacle of ultrasound, out of all options for vagus nerve stimulation technology. Just within the last month, I've been able to help establish the top of the mountain in terms of technology. A small piece of ultrasound, a small piece of hardware that you fit in your ear, and it stimulates your concha and activates your auricular branches of your vagus nerve. That's like right now. And I think honestly, out of all the stuff I've done, that hits the pinnacle, top spot of all ways to stimulate your vagus nerve. And that literally was the very first exposure I had back in 2016. So imagine if, like, how many years ago that's 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. God, was that really like 7 years ago? Like 7 years ago, I got to experience vagus nerve stimulation of the ear. Where do you get the earpieces at though? Those are only available to people who've gone through our phase 1 and phase 2 programs. So those are actually unlimited availability to certain people. But they'll be available shortly. They're just not available widely. So we're not selling those out to the larger market. But I mean, imagine if like most people's journey into the vagus nerve is like what I just shared with Danielle, breathing and squeezing. Like that's their first time they okay, I'm going to stimulate my vagus nerve. And then they might upgrade to I'm going to use an ear clip system with an electrical stimulator for $17. I'm going to put a 9-volt battery in my ear. That's the next step. And then they buy something I don't know, some kind of a $200 device on Facebook ads, like a Pulsetto or a Wholist or something like that, and then they get that, and then they go up to the $500 Gamma Core device, and they're doing that, and then eventually they go to using ultrasound, like then they're doing a full ultrasound device, and then they upgrade their ultrasound, and then they go eventually, finally, at the peak, after years of going up this tree, to an in-ear ultrasound device. And it takes them maybe, a couple years to get from where they are right now to eventually getting up there. And almost all the time, they're going to tell me, gosh, if I only could have started there than where I did start. It just took me that whole time to get there. So that's certainly a factor. That's certainly a thing that happens. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure many of you, once you eventually get to try the in-ear ultrasound, you're going to be like, oh my God, I wish I had this years ago, right? But it's funny, in my state, I started my whole introduction to the vagus nerve in any way, shape, or form was literally ultrasound right onto the vagus nerve, right in my ear. So I got to literally get that experience 6.5-ish years ahead of the rest of the world, which is kind of insane to think of. So I've had a big head start on developing it, thinking about it, envisioning it, dreaming it, making it possible, advising teams. We have engineers all over the country making this kind of stuff. So it's pretty exciting. How long, Danielle? I would say, it depends. Let's talk. We have a pathway to get these, again, it's not, we don't have a page you can go to and just buy now, basically, for that. You can read about it. I'll send that to you. Let's see here. So I'll put that in the chat. If you do want to go learn about the in-ear vagus nerve stimulation system, that's called phase 3, and there's an opt-in page. So you'll go there. You have to subscribe to 4 specific videos to learn about the process of what that is. If you're interested, if you're really interested, otherwise that's fine. Not a big deal. But we're very selective about that program for sure. And I would say in a couple of years, maybe in a year if we're lucky, that we'll have a website where you can go to and you can just buy that device now. So that will come. That will come eventually. But right now it's more of a project. We're being very intentional about it. I'm a big fan of getting people to, again, the better the technology, the more the risk potentially is of dependence, and it's good technology for sure. But I want to make sure that the people who use it first use it the right way, and they're very intentional and selective, about it. So, but also, as far as using ultrasound, that's my generalized recommendation. And so we have information about that here. So I'll put that here in the chat, vegushub.com/ultrasound. So you can read about ultrasound vagus nerve stimulation right there. That is a very good web page to go visit, and you can learn more about it there. But yeah, certainly, I know the message you sent. I get it. I lost my sister to suicide, and it was funny. It's so funny that came up today. I'm a big believer in. Do you guys know about what's called simulation theory? That maybe the world we live in is kind of a simulated existence of some sort. Like, it kind of does seem reality seems a little wacky at times, you know what I'm saying? Thank you for that, Danielle. I appreciate it. It is, I have a good time. But I was watching a video from a guy named David Paulides. He's a best-selling documentary filmmaker. He has a YouTube channel called Can-Am. He did a project called Missing 411 about how a lot of people go missing in the forests while hiking. And, he's a private investigator by trade, but he had a son named Ben. And his son Ben had some mental health challenges. And his son Ben did commit suicide years ago. And somebody in the chat was, again, sharing with him that they also have thoughts of ending it all. And David Paulides, the father who had lost his son years ago, he's the guy hosting this YouTube channel. He said if Ben is here right now listening to me, I want to let him know that what you left behind is the type of nearly unsurvivable sorrow that we are barely making it through. So when you do, if you do that, just know how much it's going to hurt the people left behind, and that there are people who care about you so much, and that people really want to do anything and everything they can in their power to help you. And so, again, I don't know. It's not a simple subject for sure, but certainly if there's anything that I can do to help, my craft and my trade is vagus nerve stimulation. So if that's some avenue that you want to go down, to explore, I certainly wish that 12 years ago, when my sister did commit suicide, that I had something to help her, and I didn't at the time. Now I do believe I do. So, it would be unfortunate of me to not make you aware of that too. So Danielle, if you do need some help, and I'm sure a lot of the other ladies here in the chat could also, just send some good thoughts to Danielle as well, and just hope that she gets the right resources to help her out in this time, right? So anyway, I appreciate you joining us, but yeah, there's something incredible about having a really healthy vagus nerve. It makes you so darn resilient to get through the good and the bad in life. And so I hope that every one of you watching can at some point enjoy and experience the bliss that can come from having a really on fire vagus nerve in a good way, right? Having that vagus nerve just like really come alive. There's nothing quite like it. And I can understand, like I said at the beginning, like when you feel disconnected from that feeling, life is not worth living. But the thing is, where people are told in our society that the thing that they need to do to get it is to be loved harder, or to buy things more, or to be better in some way, is that our society always places that good feeling in the hands of someone else. It says that you don't have the internal ability to be all that you want to be. And that's just total bullshit. I believe that every one of you watching and everyone on the planet has everything that they need within them right now to be all that they want to be everything that they could be in this life. And if we can connect with that, and that's really through the vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is that conduit upon which you can activate that innate internal healing power and intelligence. And so, again, I'm just going to every day keep on telling people that, and keep on getting on here. And if I'm talking to if I'm just talking to a blank screen, I'll continue to tell that to people. So anyway, thank you so much. But all right. Well, thanks guys so much for watching on YouTube. We're going to wrap it up there on the YouTubes, and just kind of wrap it up here on Facebook too. So, we have a person in the YouTube who wanted the link to that on YouTube. So let me just share the links for that. I typically look at the screen on my Facebook too, so I don't check YouTube, but somebody's asking for those links, so I'm going to share that here. So vegushub.com/ultrasound, and then the phase 3 opt-in. So if you want to learn more about the phase 3 program and in your ultrasound, you can go there as well. But thanks everybody so much for watching us on YouTube, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks so much, and take care.